Today I'm deep into the Scottish border country, only a very short walking distance from the River Tweed, dividing Scotland from the English border country. We're going to look at a very small hamlet today that played a significant role in the Anglo-Scottish affairs in the late 1200s, and the political events that would lead to not only potential civil war, but the Scottish Wars of Independence. I'm in the very small village of Birgham, and there's supposed to have been a village here ever since the 7th century. There's a 13th century chapel in the church around here, but we're going to explore an old ancient road, and this road leads down to the River Tweed. Birgham is opposite the English hamlet of Carham, not far from the once mighty Wark Castle. And there was either a ford down here or a bridge at some point where the English would come across here and have negotiations and meetings with the Scots. You can just imagine in the passage of time, going back not only to medieval times, but all those centuries ago, the amount of feet, people, horses and carts that would come up and down here, crossing this ford or bridge. And such was the case in the late 1200s. King Alexander III of Scotland had died. His wife, Yolande de Dreux, who was thought to be pregnant, that didn't turn out to be so. And this effectively almost distinguished the end of Alexander's line. But he had a granddaughter, the Maid of Norway, 7 years old, daughter of King Eric of Norway. With King Alexander dead now, there had never been a Queen of Scots. And with the Maid of Norway being the natural heiress, King Edward I of England saw an opening for control, and a marriage was proposed between the 7-year-old Margaret, the Maid of Norway, Alexander's granddaughter, and the young Prince Edward, who would later become King Edward II. Dispensation for the marriage was granted by the Pope. Now, negotiations took place at Salisbury in 1289 between the English, the Scots and the Norse, and it was agreed that the Maid of Norway should come to Scotland. The English decked out a ship in great splendour at Yarmouth. It left with banners and it was adorned. Even they provided an organ to interest the young child. It was stocked with salt meat, fish, dates and figs, but the terms ran into difficulty because agreements hadn't been reached, and the English returned empty-handed. And this brought them up here to Birgham on the other side of the River Tweed to begin negotiations that would result in the Treaty of Birgham. The Scots were extremely cautious in dealing with King Edward I. They stipulated that Scotland would remain a free entity in itself, that its administration and government would take place only in Scotland, and that its relics and its muniments would remain in Scotland until the Maid of Norway gave birth to an heir. So this is the beautiful and mighty River Tweed. Likely there was a bridge or a ford which looks like it could have been somewhere up there where they would have crossed and made that very short way into Scotland. But this is the divide between the Scottish border and the English border. The Scots were absolutely correct to be extremely cautious of Edward, because when Edward's administrator, the warrior Bishop Anthony Beck, drew up the agreement, he omitted the part where Scotland would remain not subject to England. And of course the Scots recognised this, and that had to be corrected and then ratified. I've said many times before in films that I've made that the River Tweed is my favourite river. I've followed many parts of it from its beginnings, its humble beginnings, nothing more than a stream just outside the town of Motte, right down here in the Scottish borders. And it makes for some great walking. It really is a beautiful river, and there's a nice, steady, powerful flow out in the centre right now. But this is it. The England before you, and on Scottish soil here. What we're going to do is to take a short walk through the village of Birgham, and there's a small local park there called Treaty Park, where tradition says that that's where the treaty on the 18th of July 1290 was signed. This treaty would establish peace between the Scots and the English. It would quell the civil war that was brewing with the Bruce family trying to make a stake for the throne after the king had died. The bishops had pleaded with Edward to come north, or to at least intervene and help them with their decisions, because when the guardians of Scotland and the political magnates were gathered in Perth, Robert Bruce, this is the grandfather of the future king, the competitor, he arrived in Perth with a considerable force. He was willing to take up arms and fight. Thus, a marriage between the Maid of Norway and the Prince Edward, who would become King Edward II, would seal peace between the two nations. When I think of King Edward I, and I do recommend Michael Presswitch's book on King Edward I. Mark Morris also wrote a very good book called A Great and Terrible King. But the man, if you love your Scottish history, the man is worth investigating. He's worth doing your research on, because here was a very astute character. Here was a man who spied the tiniest of opportunities, and he was a great manipulator. He was also a great lawyer. He had a very good legal mind. And in one of the future projects that I'm going to do, I'm going to break down the different stages of Edward's life, because the Lord Edward, the Prince Edward, was very different from the man who became king. And the young king was very different from the man who became the later and older king, driven by obsessive ambition to bring Scotland under his grasp. When Bishop Anthony Beck, Edward's man, came up here, Edward had nevertheless, despite the stipulations in the treaty, more than a request, asked that the Scots be obedient to him. Now, that's a small statement, but there's a lot in that statement. Treaties are signed, signatures are made, and yet Edward is telling the Scottish guardians, and those with political sway at the time to be obedient, listen, and to apply the words of Bishop Anthony Beck. Early scheming, early machinations are taking place. I am positive, in all of my research, that Edward had a hard stare on Scotland. That he was not just up here to stand by the wayside and help keep the peace. In the years to come, Edward would do anything but keep the peace. He wanted to dissolve Scotland, and he proved that in his own words with the Bruces. But that was in the time to come. This is just prior to the great cause. There is not much in Birgham today to remind us of that time. Obviously, any homes and houses that were there are gone. There is thought to be a 13th century chapel. But after we finish with this little village, there is something very important to me, and I think it will be hugely interesting to yourself, that I want to show you. Because that was certainly around in the year 1290. And it was held by a powerful family who would no doubt have known about this and no doubt have attended. Every single Scottish power player were here at the signing of this treaty. This was an event, a historic event. To live locally and not show up is unthinkable for me. I think it would have drawn everyone from miles around. As I say, this deep defile of a pathway has seen many thousands of feet over the years. I can imagine this being a very excited occasion where this marriage would seal the relationship between the Scots and the English. Likely many of the Scottish families, knights, pages, wagons were all camped out along the River Tweed there. And the nobles and people in question would make their way up this path. It must have been quite a thing, knowing that the King of England's advisors were here and that this important occasion was taking place. A Queen of Scots, never heard of before. This is the old cemetery in Birgham, but it was said that even 100 years ago, the site of the old 13th century chapel, which was one of 4 in the parish of Eccles nearby, was still visible. So those men and women who were making their way up into the village for the signing of this treaty would have known a chapel here. But that is long gone now. Well, it's not much to look at, and you'd be forgiven for driving past this place, but this is known as Treaty Park. This is where those officials and politicians gathered to sign that treaty on the 18th of July, 1290. I can also imagine cheers going up and a huge political sigh of relief once that treaty was signed, because Scotland really was in political disarray, with the Bruces threatening war with the Balials, and general unrest, insecurity, and now a marriage alliance that would give them peace, and also an heir to the throne of Scotland. This is Treaty Park. Now I want to take you to an ancient landmark in the area. This place is definitely 12th or 11th century, and it would have been very much in operation when all this was happening. What I'm going to show you today, many of you will be familiar with the motte and bailey strongholds that I've taken you to on my journeys, especially up in the Upper Clyde Valley. But there's one here, and it's ancient. And it definitely would have been here at the time of the Treaty of Birgham. But it's one with a little bit of a difference. And I've just asked at the farm, they've given me permission to come along the short way. I was going to trek over the fields and across the Leet water and up here. But alas, here we are. So you can see how steep this is. I've come through that valley there. This is the Leet water, and we've come up this deep escarpment here. But if you think that's steep, and the view is even really quite spectacular from here, and at Birgham, where we were, just over that way, a couple of miles, not even, we come to this large medieval motte and bailey fortification. And this is quite something. Look at how well preserved that mound is. It is an absolute beauty. You can see the outer ramparts there to the left of it. A motte and bailey. There would have been some sort of motte here in heavy rain. But this is an absolute gem, and we're going to explore this just a little bit. I've stuck my jacket on because it's quite a strong wind up here, and this is quite steep. I wouldn't like to roll down that hill. And as we get right up here onto the summit, this is something else. What a large edifice! This would have been a huge wooden fortification. It would have stuck out in this land like a sore thumb. Now this was home to the Darnchester family, the medieval family, Darnchester. As I say, Birgham, only a couple of miles that way. And I find it beyond belief that they would have known about that convention between English and Scots that was taking place, that they would not have gone. That would have been big, big news in this area. But look at this, look at the defences this has. Extremely steep, and I am only standing on a mound here. This mound may have had a 10 to 15 foot high palisade all around it here. It is an absolute gem. Wow. But But there's a bonus, ladies and gentlemen. What we're going to explore after we've taken a look at this wonderful example of a motte and bailey. The view is phenomenal. We're going to explore this old, ruined 18th century mansion. What a commanding position this is. And it's no real stretch of the imagination to be on a palisade 10 to 15 foot higher into seeing this. And of course you would have had open plain, forestry, just like so. A wonderful place, just on this side of the Scottish border country. The Cheviot Hills beyond in the distance. I've climbed quite a number of them and had happy times there. And I will do so again. So you really get a good idea of the shape here when we look at it from this angle. This old stone marker here, it's very difficult now to make out what it says. I will need to research that. But look at these defences. Wow. A medieval relic. Even more ancient than that, I would imagine. This would have been used back in Iron Age times, Roman times. Marvellous defences here. I would not like to have been trapped down here trying to get beyond a huge palisade on top of that hill. And because it was so close to the English border and during the Scottish Wars of Independence, it may well have been in the firing line. But the Darnchester family, there is not too much information I can gather on them. I will need to do more research in that area. But this old mansion over here looks beautifully in place. We'll see that in a moment, but just look at the defences here. I have vied this from the roadside many, many times. As I usually say, like a dog eyeing a bone, knowing that I had to get up here. But I wanted to pair this with the video on the Treaty of Birgham. Earlier in the video I was saying Birgham. The farmer's wife corrected me with the correct pronunciation. It's Birgham. But this place would have been standing strong and fully functional in the year 1290 when all of that was going on. A historic gem that most people will only see from the roadside. The farmer, by the way, is extremely accommodating. It's just nice to ask permission. What a beauty. This part here seems more like a natural slope. And this part seems built. Built for defence. A phenomenal example of a motte and bailey. That's a lovely place to have a cottage. And it really attracts the sun. I would love that. Beautiful place. But we're going to go and take a look at this edifice here. So this motte and bailey castle is known as the Mount. It's on the Ordnance Survey maps. But all I know about this structure here is that it's simply called Castle Law, which is the name of the farm. So this digresses somewhat from the story about the Treaty of Birgham and the Maid of Norway and the marriage to Prince Edward II. But I feel it would be rude not to include this. It's directly next door to the Motte Castle, and it's interesting, and I think you'll find it interesting. We shall return to the Maid of Norway in a moment. Quite a remarkable place. High on the hill. Again, a splendid view from this place. Hunted by pheasants. Wow. I love old structures. And even although this is not that old, the history it would have had and how it is just left here to grow old. It's quite amazing. I'm very careful not to disturb anything in here. Just due to how generally unsafe this place is. And it's just as well that it is out in the middle of nowhere. Oh, this old place here. Wow. These old ceiling beams. Remarkable. To think that people had jovial times in here. Perhaps it was unfinished. I don't know. I will need to research more on this place. The old medieval motte straight over there. It makes a wonderful sight from the road. A grand sight. How times change. How times go by. That's a beautiful front curved piece of stonework. Again, this place is on a large hilltop here. The beautiful Leitwater, it really is such a beautiful river. Or waterway, it really is. What a wonderful walk along there, but just look at the terrain that this place is built on. We have the old from centuries ago, and we have something else 200 to 300 years ago, standing side by side. While the rest of the world moves forward. Fascinating. And so, folks, to return to the story of the Maid of Norway, the treaty is signed, the alliance has been made. The Maid of Norway left Norway, but she would never reach Scotland. She would die just off Orkney, 7 years old. And that would send Scotland into political chaos. The peace and the security was gone. The last of the line of Celtic kings were gone. And now King Edward had an even greater opportunity when he was asked to come north and abdicate between the House of Bruce and the House of Balliol and the other weakened claimants to the throne. But with the Maid of Norway dead, all bets were off. It must have been a sad, sad time for the Scots nation when the Maid of Norway passed away. What did she die of on that ship? Fever? Sometimes my brain can't help thinking, with all this political scheming, that there was perhaps, this is purely supposition, an underhand interference into the affair. At 7 years old, tragedy. She was taken back to her father at Bergen, Eric, the King of Norway. And Scotland, as the people alive then knew it, would never be the same again. Thank you for tuning in, for listening to me, for following the channel. If you haven't already, please comment, like, share, and above all, subscribe. I couldn't do it without you. I'll see you next time, folks. Have a great day.